Today, we become legends.
Smite, by most metrics, is HiRez's most successful game, and a bit of a cash cow for them. Sure, Paladins has had its time in the sun, and at one point it was even larger than Smite. Realm Royale is by far the most successful in terms of peak concurrent players, achieving over 200,000 on Steam around the launch period, but has since fallen off massively. Smite has been consistently HiRez's biggest success story, so it's no surprise that many spin-off games have been tried over the years that utilize Smite's IP in a different genre. We've seen this be successful for other games franchises, most notably and most comparably with League of Legends, that has launched into the auto battler genre with TFT, and the card game genre with Legends of Runeterra, plus Arcane, though that's of course not a game. However, Smite spin-offs have been noticeably less successful. This is the story of how every single one of these games failed. Let's jump in. I'll be going in chronological order here, so first up we have Smite Rivals. Rivals debuted in January 2017, and with the release of Clash Royale about a year earlier, this game essentially attempted to capture that market with a Smite coat of paint. This will become a theme as we go along. Rivals was a deck building game, in quite a few quotation marks, as technically you do put together a deck that allows you to use certain gods, minions and spells in the match. These cost mana to play and will be sent down one of 3 lanes to fight whatever the opponent chooses to send at you. Winning the fights lets you get at the towers in each lane and eventually their titan to win the match. If you know of or have played Clash Royale, it was basically that with a Smite skin. Rivals, however, did not last long in the public sphere, most likely due to it just being a worse, copied version of Clash Royale and other similar games that already existed on mobile with a large dedicated player base. The only real reason to play it was the Smite theme, and that clearly wasn't enough, with the game entering beta in January 2017 and being completely cancelled by March that same year, only being available for 2 short months. Our next Smite spin-off did last quite a bit longer, though that's not particularly an achievement when compared to Smite Rivals. Hand of the Gods Smite Tactics was HiRez's next foray into a spin-off within the Smite universe, first being revealed in May 2017, only 2 months after Rivals shut down. Smite Tactics, as I'll call it for the remainder of this portion to avoid the overly long name, was a card game that did offer something more unique than Rivals. You'd build a deck consisting of various units, spells and gods, and would play them out onto a grid-based battlefield. Combat was very similar to other card games with a health and attack system, and each unit could move around the board to be in or out of attack range to be attacked by other units. Each player had a core, and the general idea was protect your core, attack the enemy core, and you win. Other games like it did exist, but this one didn't have quite as much direct competition as Rivals did, but still launched to an extremely mediocre amount of players. Those that did play it generally found it quite fun from what I've seen, but it never reached sustainable levels of players that would be worth investing development time into for HiRez. The game did receive a few updates throughout the remainder of 2017, but player numbers dropped off to next to 0 very quickly, and the game was essentially put on maintenance mode from 2018 through January 1st, 2020, when the servers shut down for good. While Hand of the Gods didn't reach success, it was at least somewhat unique and found a small but dedicated fanbase for a little while. However, our next Smite spin-off was doomed from the start. In April 2019, HiRez revealed Smite Blitz to the world. This was a mobile-exclusive gacha game that was basically a clone of games like Raid Shadow Legends. You build a team of gods, equip them with items, and battle through waves of enemies to reach a boss and move on to the next stage. The game was filled with microtransactions, different currencies, an energy system that stops you playing the game until you wait or buy more, rolls and openings for different stars of gods to push you into trying to get the best 5-star versions of everything. The home screen really shows you exactly what this game was: Smite Shadow Legends. The reveal was met with probably the most harsh backlash of any Smite spin-off we've seen to date, with the top 2 comments on the reveal trailer summing it up quite well.
They found the people who were ripping off Smite art for their Chinese mobile games and asked them to make this.
Did y'all just bootleg your own game?
It really did feel like this was a cheap cash grab bootleg game looking to find a few dedicated whales and milk them for all they had. Smite Rivals was a bit of a clone, but at least it had some uniqueness and died mostly due to being not better than its direct competition. Hand of the Gods Smite Tactics was a fairly unique and genuinely somewhat fun game that struggled to find an audience and died. Smite Blitz was a blatant cash grab that I'm glad didn't find an audience, as it cheapens the Smite IP and employs all the gacha tricks in the book to milk those juicy whales. All the spin-offs in this video failed, but this is the only one that I'm glad failed. It launched into beta in September 2019 and promptly died, and servers were shut down by October 2020. That's a lot of negativity, but thankfully I can change my tune for our next spin-off. Prophecy was a game that was not technically developed by HiRez, but still published by them, which released into early access in May 2020. Much like, well, basically every HiRez game, Prophecy wasn't exactly breaking new ground in the gaming world. It was an auto-battler, trying to capture some of that emerging market after the launch of Dota Auto Chess / Underlords and League's TFT. You would build up a warband of gods, match their traits for bonuses and equip them with items, fight an enemy warband, and repeat until only one of 8 players in the match is left standing. You all probably know this formula with how huge auto-battlers were and somewhat still are in the gaming space. Prophecy wasn't exactly the most unique game out there, but it did have some aspects of it that made it different from the likes of TFT, Underlords, and Hearthstone Battlegrounds. The trait system wasn't based on specific units like TFT, there was a certain pool of traits available that was different on each match, and you bought them directly from the shop to attach to your units, meaning some of them had synergy with different gods more effectively. It was a bit like TFT emblems, but that's how every single trait worked in Prophecy. Some were better on certain gods, like increasing attack speed on hunters or giving more mana to mages, and they also had some pretty sick combos, like one that gave a chance for attacks to chain lightning to nearby enemies, and comboing that with a chance to freeze on every attack, which would proc on the chain lightning to stun their whole team. Anyway, I won't go too much into how the game worked, as it was ultimately quite similar to the likes of TFT or Underlords, but as you can probably tell, I did genuinely enjoy Prophecy back in the day, and of all the spin-offs, I think it had the most potential to find an audience and was the most unique. Sadly, a bit like Hand of the Gods, Prophecy failed to find an audience quickly, and perhaps due to the nature of their previous Smite spin-offs, HiRez abandoned the project less than 2 months after launch. A real shame, given I personally think this game of all of them had the most potential to find a lasting audience. And finally, our most recent Smite spin-off as of 2024 was Divide Knockout, or DKO. Launched in 2022, this was an arena fighter game that is best summed up as Smash Bros but third person with Smite gods. You entered into an arena, taking hits increased your percent, and the higher percent you were, the further you fly on being hit, until you're eventually knocked into the blast zone or too far off the main stage that you can't recover in time and fall to your death. DKO was probably the most mid of all these spin-offs. It wasn't terrible by any means, and nothing compared to Smite Shadow Legends. HiRez clearly have a style in that taking an existing popular genre and trying to release something into it with their own spin. Sometimes that spin is enough to find a niche and be successful, like Smite, Paladins, and Realm Royale until they killed that with bad updates. But in DKO's case, it just struggled to find a player base within that niche. As the most recent spin-off, DKO is technically still alive as of the making of this video, but it gets a little philosophical on whether you think something on life support with no hope of returning is alive or not. DKO's player numbers have dropped more than 99% from its launch weekend, and the team have completely abandoned the game with not a single update in months. Servers are technically still live as of June 2024, but I can't imagine they're breaking even with keeping the game open at this point, so it will probably shut down for good fairly soon. But that's the somewhat sad story of Smite's many spin-off games, all of which have failed spectacularly in different ways. What are your thoughts on all these games? Did you like some of them and wish they would have succeeded, or are you more of the view that they were just siphoning money and dev time away from Smite and they never should have existed in the first place? Let me know in the comments, and I'll catch you guys in another one later on. Have a great day, and peace out, you nerds.